It's like chocolate black towel there.
Okay, so we can't.
I told her I didn't announce the age in the chamber, so she's up to me. But please enjoy. She's playing on her.
Is she the oldest city employee? No,
There was actually
no, the longest serving.
I believe she is at this point. There was I'm not sure. I had to ask. There was a police officer who stayed on active status for a very long time and is about the same era. So I'll have to find out. Very close. And don't leave that kid behind. A couple of interesting things are coming up in the city of Houston, and I wanted to start today with an event that we're going to have, actually a commemoration, not an event, that we're going to have on August 28th, but we want to get the word out. We have letters going out across the city today. August 28th is the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. That is a speech that has resonated through years. Many of us have listened to over and over again. And nationwide in cities, we're going to pause at the time he delivered that speech, which would be August 28th, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Houston time. And we are going to ring the bells of freedom around the United States. We are asking churches to briefly ring their church bells, people to ring handbells. We'll have a bell outside of City Hall on the steps to ring. It is an opportunity to come together as a community and realize that while all of the dreams of the civil rights movement have not been realized, that we have made tremendous progress and that we are one country united in trying to seek justice for all. I'm hoping that Houstonians will join me and that individual communities, churches, schools will have their own bell ringing observance. It is not intended for speeches. It is not intended for polarizing debate. It is intended to be a moment of pause and reflection and listening to the bells. And I think it will be a great thing for Houston to participate in, and I'm very excited to make the call to our citizens to do this. If anyone would like more information, as I said, we're going to be sending letters out to schools and churches, but if anyone would like more information, they can certainly contact the mayor's office. That's what I have. What's with y'all?
Mayor, are you partnering with any organizations for this particular occasion, or are you going to do this as a mayor's initiative?
For the Let Freedom Ring?
Yes, ma'am.
This is a nationwide initiative. And it's something that is being shared mayor to mayor, and I have called on some of my fellow mayors and have been joined by my fellow mayors. But it is designed not to be about politics, but about coming together as a community and realizing that there's still a dream of equality that we need to pursue.
Mayor, on that ambulance fee collection issue, has there been a gap since July 25th when that contract ended? Or are we going to be able to collect on the bills that have been incurred during that time?
I'm going to have to give you two answers to that. There may have been a gap because council delayed the item for a week. And we've made it known to council that there could be a short gap. There are always issues with collections under Medicare and Medicaid. One of those issues is they have a strict time limit in which you can't look back. We don't know what the impact will be, but I wanted, because this was an emergency situation, I wanted to make sure the council members had the opportunity to get their questions answered, and the tag was part of that.
To the emergency part, clearly the city knew there were issues with the vendor for a long time preceding the termination. Could there not have been a competitive process of some sort or a different process than what occurred?
I'm going to have the city attorney stand with me, but the issue was we issued an order for them to stop collecting at a certain date in May. Under their contract, they had 30 days to cure the problem. So we automatically were behind the 8 ball for 30 days. And then I believe they asked for some additional time to work through some of the issues. At the same time, if we are giving them an opportunity to cure, we can't go out and negotiate with somebody else because that wouldn't be a good faith negotiation. So we were in limbo for at least that period. And then the council process moving forward. Obviously, during that 30-day period, we began to look what were our options. We said, well, we took this out for a full RFP in 2011. These were the companies that responded. We did a quick review around the country, who's the top of the market. It's the same companies that had responded in 2011, so we knew what the universe was, so that as soon as the clock stopped ticking on their cure period where we had to be on hold, we began negotiations.
And is there any concern about moving forward based on the data from 2011? Obviously, the competitor had an interest in saying, well, my proposal would be better today.
Yeah, and anytime we have a large contract come through, you have, it becomes a lobbying effort, and that's what this was. It was an effective, somewhat effective lobbying effort. Obviously, not that many council members were swayed. But this wasn't about going back and taking data from 2011. It was going back and saying, we had fresh data in 2011, and these were companies that were interested in doing business with us. Are those companies still available and interested in doing business? And who else is in the marketplace? And we could quickly see that Digitech and Informatics were the two competitors. Digitech at the time of 2011 was the top-ranked company, but the feeling was that because we are such a large entity, that they might not have the financial wherewithal to cover our business. In the interim, they have grown as a company, and as part of our due diligence, looking around the country, seeing who was collecting in various cities, it was clear that they could not only handle our business, but would aggressively compete for it.
Along those lines, Intermetic claimed that it has already gone through the process of converting ACS files and that it knows the technology better than Digitech. Was there any discussion about that in choosing Digitech?
I think you also heard Digitech say the same thing in verse.
Okay, yes, I know, but I mean, I just mean that they raised it in claiming experience.
The big challenge for us is that the actual hardware in the ambulances is not owned by the city of Houston. It was owned by ACS Xerox. And so you have the data conversion issue and the actual hardware issue. And really, we never received a bid or an offer from Informatics, and so they can say all sorts of things. We entered into professional services negotiation only with Digitech. So whatever Informatics says, it's meaningless because we didn't have full negotiation. But the issue is, what do you do with the hardware? The city could pay for it, the vendor could pay for it, or the vendor could pay for it and amortize the cost over the period of the contract, which is what we are doing with the Digitech contract.
Yeah. Now, on the legal side, and I realize you can't talk about the substance of it, but procedurally, my understanding from the complaint is that that hardware and the data in it are issues of evidence that is in dispute. Does that cause an additional problem in getting access to it and using it?
I'd say I'm going to ask Attorney Feldman to come up here, but it is rare that we sue a vendor and that we go in and aggressively seek to recover, but it's clearly an adversarial relationship at this point.
The only issue with respect to the hardware is making certain that the city had access to it during this interim period of time, that it was seized by seized by Xerox, and the city has taken steps to establish its legal right to the hardware. The data, which is actually more important, is a different issue, and we're still in the battle trying to get that data from Xerox, and that is going to be a matter of evidence in the litigation.
Yeah. Don't you have to get that pretty quickly to collect on Medicaid claims?
Yes.
When Mr. Feldman said it was between a rock and a hard place, we wouldn't have taken this drastic step to put ourselves in a position of perhaps losing our ability to collect on some of these ambulance bills, absent really difficult set of facts from ACS Xerox. I don't know, this is going to be playing out in a court of law, but there are millions of dollars at stake.
In fee collections,
In fee collections and in inappropriate activities by potentially inappropriate activities. Alleged inappropriate activities by that company.
How many months of bills or of data is tied, how many weeks or months is tied up in this?
Well, I can say that the dispute that we have with them involves data going back for a period of years. But in terms of our collection efforts today, we're talking about a period of months that we have to have immediate access to.
We gave them we gave them the order to cease collecting in May.
May.
When in May?
Yeah.
Right at the end of May. So the 30 days started, so that took us through June.
No.
We've been negotiating. We're in July, so.
So
Okay.
2 months. Okay.
So there's still an opportunity, but it's going to be very, very difficult for the company.
Mayor C.O. Bradford seemed to have an issue with that, and
I'm still in the
do you think any of his arguments were valid? Like, even though the vote was passed and was in favor of going forward, but how many of the city council members do you know is really up to speed on this particular issue since it was so technical?
Every council member was offered a one-on-one meeting with the city attorney to go over the legal aspects of our situation with ACS Xerox. In addition, they were offered meetings with the city attorney and the finance director on what would be required in the contract for collections. This actually appeared on the agenda a week ago. It didn't just show up yesterday, as some council members were alleging yesterday. And we clearly acknowledge an unusual and an emergency situation where we preemptively took one of our vendors to court, and knowing that it would put us in a very, very difficult position in terms of collections. But some things are, there are some actions that can't be brooked by the city, and we needed to do something.
How many other cases are there in the pipeline that may be technically listed?
You know, you never know what's going to happen. This is an unusual set of circumstances, and we may have difficult contracts that come forward again in the future, and we've had a few since I've been mayor, but this set of circumstances won't be repeated. It was a fairly unique contract.
Mayor, on the agenda item number 7, there was a settlement with a developer who had sought to subdivide land in a neighborhood. Can you explain why the city would get involved in that type of situation? What were the implications if the city didn't take this action?
Okay. This is the Dave show.
Well,
Give the rest of your closing argument, and I didn't want to.
not on this one. As explained in the RCA, this was a situation where a developer came in and sought to subdivide, and the planning commission denied it based on its interpretation of the deed restrictions. There was a real dispute as to that interpretation of the deed restrictions. Then the community amended the deed restrictions to, in an effort to eliminate any issue of interpretation, but the developer still came back and reapplied for the, to subdivide. One of the issues in the litigation, which thought was something that certainly had to give the city pause in determining how to go forward with this, was whether or not the action of the homeowners association in amending the deed restrictions would effectively constitute an act of the government for purposes of what we call the Vested Rights Act in Texas. Under the Vested Rights Act, once a citizen commences a process with the government, like, for example, a permit, the government cannot change the rules of the game, can't change the procedures, can't change the regulations, can't change the law. And so the issue of whether the action of a homeowners association in amending a deed restriction would be tantamount to an action of the government has never been decided by the courts. And I don't know how that issue will fall out. And in a city without zoning, where deed restrictions are so important, this was an issue that we didn't need to have decided today.
Mayor, with your background as a community activist and whatnot, do you can you talk a little bit about the implications of that? I mean, is that why it's necessary for the city as a whole to spend $100,000 to essentially get involved in a neighborhood-specific dispute?
We're not spending $100,000 to get involved in a neighborhood-specific dispute. What we're doing is seeking to resolve a dispute in which the facts are muddy and take us into an area that the city's not interested in going to. We, in an unzoned city, depend on deed restrictions, and we really live and die by deed restrictions. We have to make sure that if we are going to stand up and aggressively enforce deed restrictions, that there's no question that everything is fair in the way that they are applied. And we regularly speak about the issue of, here at this council chamber, of development coming forward that the neighborhood doesn't like or doesn't approve of, and there's always a sentiment that, well, we need to change the rules to stop it. We can't change the rules to stop it. You can change the rules so that it doesn't happen again, but you can't change the rules to stop it. And this was in that gray area, and it wasn't beneficial to the city to continue on that path.
Mayor, you talked yesterday about the tweak. Can you define what the tweak is going to be? It's going to be a tweak?
No,
or an
but I
actual
will,
amendment?
when we're ready to bring it forward, we will do that. I will say that what firefighters keep asking for is to be treated differently than our other city employees. And I am not willing to do that. I recognize that firefighting is an inherently dangerous job. Being a police officer is an inherently dangerous job. And there's some difficult, hard jobs that other city employees do as well. What we want to do is treat all of our employees fairly and equally, and we're not going to, we are going to make some tweaks, but we're not going to do something that creates a separate class for firefighters.
Thank you.
Thank you.